What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing a whole load of bulls in the Open Great League with 4 Pokemon that each learn a different typing of Weather Ball and also all learn Energy Ball, with normal cast form, Ninetales, Ludicolo, and Abomasnow. Now something a little bit off topic that I noticed recently, given the questionable design of normal cast form, is that you can literally run it with Tackle plus 2 bulls, which is crazy to think about. Now anyways, of course you can't run all 4 of these Pokemon on the same team, so I'll be taking it in turns to swap one of them out and showcasing 4 battles with each combination. The reasoning behind running this team is because later today, the Weather Cup is returning after quite a long time, and the typings allowed actually relate to the different Weather Ball typings. Now unfortunately, that meta looks absolutely awful because as usual, one typing completely dominates all the others, and they make no effort to ban Pokemon and try to balance the meta. So I just decided to run the theme here in the Open Great League. Also, a lot of people have been keen to see me run the occasional top meta Pokemon here and there, and I do actually run them from time to time if it fits a specific theme, like this one with the Kanto Ninetales. And you guys will already know this, but man, this Pokemon is seriously busted. It is by far the best Pokemon I've used this season, and honestly, it kind of felt wrong using it. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which top meta Pokemon do you want to hate because it's so common, but you also kind of love using it yourself? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I should go into the first battle, leading Shadow Ninetales into Feraligatr. Of course, not the best matchup. I do have Grass-type coverage in Energy Ball, but I've got 2 Grass-type Pokemon in the backline, both of which also only take neutral damage from Ice Beam, but I'm able to catch a double-resisted Hydro Cannon onto my Ludicolo, forcing out a Primeape, and they are going to go straight for a Rage Fist. Of course, that is just neutral damage. It's going to boost up their attack stat, and potentially, they might be able to fully farm me down here, but we go for Weather Ball. They actually no shield, and now we can farm them down. The opponent comes back in with Feraligatr, and unfortunately now it's their turn to get the fast move farm down, so we're going to come in with the Abomasnow. Of course, I'm expecting an Ice Beam, but I'm going to shield anyways. I did mention it is just neutral damage, but I don't know what their final Pokemon is, so we might as well play it safe and start using shields. We go for the Energy Ball, that gets the knockout, and their final Pokemon, I'm very glad that I did shield the Ice Beam, because it's going to be a Carbink, where of course, we've got Energy Ball on both our remaining Pokemon, but these Rock Throws would fully fast move farm me down if I didn't already use my shield there. Of course, we go for a second Energy Ball, they are going to double shield, recognizing that it's going to do more damage from the Abomasnow because it does get same type attack bonus, whereas from the Ninetales, of course, we don't get stab, but it just does not matter here. 4th Energy Ball is going to be coming through. It gets the knockout up against the Carbink before they reach back-to-back rock sides, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's upon there into the next battle. I'm going to see Jumpluff in the lead. So, great lead matchup for me, and I've also got Abomasnow in the backline. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into their own Ninetales, and they do throw straight away, which does allow me, it does allow the opponent to not miss out on any fast moves, but I don't really care. I kind of wanted to sponge the damage anyways, and then I come in with my Ludicolo. Now here, they do actually go and full send the Energy Ball there, which does do slightly more damage than the Weather Ball, both of which would be neutral damage, by the way. We get the knockout with the Weather Ball, and here, I'm actually choosing not to throw any energy. This is because Ludicolo could have access to Ice Beam, and by not throwing, we're potentially farming up like we do have Ice Beam, and we force the opponent to use some of their energy quite early there. Because of course, if they go for quite an aggressive farm down, since they do resist everything from the Ludicolo, then it could get a little bit dicey. But now they come in with Blastoise, we can grab both shields from 2 Energy Balls here, and now we come in with the Abomasnow. I feel like in this commentary, I'm probably going to mix up Weather Ball and Energy Ball quite a few times here. At the moment, I feel like I have done a good job, but either way, we go for yet another Energy Ball, which gets the knockout up against the Blastoise. That's going to be game over. We can outpace. It doesn't really matter. We still got a shield anyways, but Weather Ball, Ice typing, going to get the knockout as it's double super effective, so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's upon there into the next battle, we're going to see a Fearow in the lead. So this is going to be a slightly positive matchup for me in the 2-shield scenario, I believe, just because the Ember damage and Weather Ball will add up eventually to put them into farm down range. However, of course, in the 1 and 0 shield scenario, we won't quite deal enough damage. So I swap out, I'm hoping to catch a Drill Run. However, the opponent, covering for a potential catch attempt there, actually ends up throwing the Drill Peck, which is super effective and very nearly takes out my Abomasnow. They then come in and and snipe me down with the Licky there, of course, on rollout. We come back in with the Ninetales as we do have a lot of energy, and we can go for back-to-back weather balls here before they even reach a body slam. Now, I don't expect them to throw straight away, so I'm going to go for one more Ember, then swap into my Ludicolo. I was hoping to catch a body slam here, but because they've overfarmed, I'm going to shield the potential Shadow Ball, and they do full send. This, however, is just going to be a body slam, so that's absolutely fine with me. We're now going to look to overfarm. I'm going to farm up to at least back-to-back weather balls before I do finally throw, but the opponent makes a really nice catch there, catching it onto Quagsire, where, of course, if they caught an energy ball, that's instantly game over. Whereas now, of course, I'm going to go for a bait with the weather ball. They go quite early there, so the opponent is actually on Drain Punch, which is quite surprising to me. Here, they're going to reach another Drain Punch. However, it's not going to deal that much damage, so we don't have to, of course, swap out there. But then they make another really nice catch there. Of course, because they were double boosted, I had to go for the Energy Ball that time around, so they swap out, they catch it onto Licky. We come back in with the Ninetales. Weather Ball grabs the final shield, and the opponent, well, they're going to overfarm a little bit, but they need to be very close to back-to-back charge moves, because just one more Astonish allows Ludicolo to get to another Weather Ball, and from this range, without any boost to their defense, it takes out the Quagsire, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there. I feel like they actually played that battle really well, making some very nice reads and catches, but still we were able to come out on top just because this team, and especially the Ninetales, is very strong. But either way, we are going to see Ninetales lead into Annihilate. At this point, we've grabbed the shield advantage. They can full send a close combat. They actually do, so of course, that gets the one shot. We're going to come in with a Ludicolo, and they come in with a Dugong. Now, something that I noticed, well, I sort of recognized kind of a little bit too late here, is often Annihilate with a Dugong is going to have a Bastiodon in the back. Of course, Bastiodon, not super common these days, so I wasn't necessarily expecting it. But once I let my Ludicolo get very low, and especially when this Energy Ball did not get the knockout, I was thinking straight away, oh, they've probably got Bastiodon in the back. At this point, there's no point in shielding because we're just way too low for Ludicolo to do anything. So I've kind of just got to hope that they don't have it in the back. They come back in with the Annihilate. And here, of course, I'm going to look to shield. I am going to look to overfarm just a little bit. Of course, I know that these low kicks are now boosted, but we do have to get some residual energy here. We're going to see that it is going to be a Bastiodon in the back line. And just for science reasons, we're going to see how much damage we can deal with the Energy Ball. That's going to be nowhere near enough to even three-shot them there, unless we get potentially a debuff, but we're not going to get to 3 charge moves, so I'll allow them to fully farm me down, and unfortunately I lose that game. So I did recognize the team there, but of course just didn't recognize it early enough there. But either way, GG's to that trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see a Kanto Ninetales mirror match. And by the way, every time that I used the Kanto Ninetales on these teams, it was in the lead. Now, of course, we don't have the best options in the backline. Cast Form is decent. However, of course, Abomasnow really does not want to see a Shadow Ninetales, so we're just going to stay in. I was hoping Energy Ball dealing slightly more damage would allow me to then farm them down before they get to the next charge move. However, Weather Ball is going to get me very low, and they can reach yet another Weather Ball. Also, I just don't have very good IVs here. I have a XXL Shadow Ninetales with the costume, which is very rare, so it's quite cool, but unfortunately, IV-wise, just not going to compete with other Ninetales, but of course, it does at least allow us to win CMP. But anyways, at this point, I'm going to look to overfarm here. I'm waiting for them to throw some energy, and then I'm going to swap into a Abomasnow, but the opponent swaps out at the same time. And honestly, that is quite a strange swap from the opponent there, just because Sableye doesn't have a great matchup into the cast form because Shadow Claws are double resisted, whereas unfortunately, because they were able to get a one-turn swap there, they're able to throw just before my Abomasnow, which means they actually outpace me to back-to-back charge moves, which typically would not be the case. Not only that, they're also on Drain Punch here, which means they're boosting up their defense, which means I'm probably not going to get the knockout here, but I'm going to swap back into cast form. I throw before they get to the next Drain Punch. Energy Ball doesn't quite get the knockout, however, but the opponent, they end up throwing energy, and that is a big mistake on their end, because now we come in with the Abomasnow, we just throw immediately, of course. Weather Ball, double super effective, takes out the Jumpluff there. We can just Powder Snow, farm down the Sableye as they clear the debuff, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see a great lead here, leading our Kanto Ninetales into the Alolan version. I'm going to go straight for an Energy Ball, as this is going to do slightly more damage. And then I'm also going to look to swap out and hopefully catch a potential Shadow Ball onto my cast form. And I'm able to do exactly that. So, of course, that is double resisted. Really nice there from me. Of course, if we caught a Body Slam, not the best matchup for me at all. Whereas now, of course, I can still tank 2 more Body Slams pretty comfortably. Now here, I don't think Energy Ball will quite get the knockout, so I am going to go for back back-to-back Weather Balls instead. And here, if the opponent wants to come back in with their Ninetales, they're more than welcome to do so, but we are going to outpace them to another Weather Ball. So at this point, Weather Ball is going to connect, and the opponent, if they overfarm too much, we're going to get to yet another Weather Ball. So Weather Ball number 2 is finally going to grab a shield. Here, I realized they would probably just barely farm me down, so I swapped back into my Ninetales. I didn't want to give them too much farm there. They're also not on Chilling Water, which is huge for me, because now we can, of course, survive the Dazzling Gleam. They also wasted a lot of energy there for no real reason, because they could have just swapped into their Altaria immediately. But either way, we can go for back-to-back Weather Balls, not doing too much damage, but a Bomber Snow can come in, Powder Snow, farm them down after using likely just one shield, and so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I see Ninetales into Mantine. So, not the best matchup for me. However, I am going to choose to stay in, at least initially, fire off the Energy Ball, and then I will be swapping out into my Cast Form. The opponent is going to no shield. We come in with the Cast Form, and the opponent responds with an Alolan Sandslash. Of course, this Pokemon has a terrible time into my Ninetales. They're going to fire off the Ice Punch. We're already at back-to-back Weather Balls, however. Unfortunately, though, because this is going to be a non-Shadow Sandslash, we're probably not going to threaten a shield. So, we go for Weather Ball number 2. Weather Ball is going to get them fairly low here, but once again, if they look to overfarm too much, I'm going to reach yet another Weather Ball. So Weather Ball number 3 going to come through. We then swap back into our Ninetales, and the opponent doesn't use any energy. Instead, they swap back into their Mantine, but that's fine with me because now we can just go and full send another Energy Ball. Energy Ball is going to be no shielded, and it actually gets the knockout. They're now going to come in with a Unova Stunfisk, and again, we can just go straight for another Energy Ball. Energy Ball is going to be shielded, they throw on CMP, and at this point, we're looking to be in a great position. But they actually bait with a Discharge, which is absolutely fine with me. Here, I could have committed to another Energy Ball. Of course, I was expecting a Discharge to come from the opponent, but it doesn't really matter at this point. I'm allowing them to fully fast move farm me down, but of course, we've got a Bomber Snow to completely wall their energy. We don't need to shield here. The opponent likely going to swap back into their Sandslash, but we're going to shield the first charge move, and then actually going to look to swap out and catch the next charge move onto my Cast Form, because I couldn't really remember who wins CMP. Whereas now, of course, they go for Ice Punch. That doesn't get the knockout because they undercharge, but we get to yet another Weather Ball because we're so spammy. Weather Ball gets the KO there. That is going to be game over. The opponent recognizes it, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I see Unova and Stunfisk this time in the lead. So, still fine with me. Once again, I am going to be looking to swap out, and this time I'm going to catch the likely Mud Bomb onto my Cast Form. The opponent is going to choose to stay in, at least initially here. I'm going to look to overfarm, and the opponent able to catch an Energy Ball onto their Licky Licky. However, that's fine. That's still neutral damage. Of course, they are going to double resist the Hex damage, which isn't ideal for me, but potentially if I can go for 3 Energy Balls and get the knockout here, then I'm actually not in a bad position. However, unfortunately, because I don't get any debuffs to their defense, it doesn't look like I will get the knockout. So instead, I swap back into my Ninetales. Weather Ball is going to be stab damage, and we are Shadow, so that is enough damage to get the knockout. They come back in with the Unova and Stunfisk, and I realize I've still got 2 shields here, so I might as well look to double shield in this matchup, and then I can actually look to swap back out of it. So of course, we grab a shield there with the Energy Ball. I'm going to shield as the opponent fires off the next Mud Bomb, and then I realize they threw straight away, so I'm going to try and catch the next move onto a Bomber Snow. It does not work out for me, but they're going to come in with a Lapras. So of course, I'm just going to full send the Energy Ball here. Weather Ball is a very risky bait as it's double resisted. However, this will allow the opponent to reach a Skull Bash, and Skull Bash is going to take out the Abomasnow. But not only that, it's also going to boost up their defense. So I'm going to farm up to back-to-back Energy Balls here, fire off the first one, and then going to swap back into my Cast Form where we've got the Weather Ball loaded. Hopefully this is going to be enough damage to take them out. Of course, they did just boost themselves, but it does get the knockout. They come back in with the Stunfisk. We barely miss out on the Energy Ball, but it doesn't really matter because we had another one loaded on the Ninetales, and of course, it's super effective. It takes out the Stunfisk, and I'm able to take that game. So, heading into the next battle, we're going to see Shadow Kanto Ninetales into a Galarian Slowking. So the opponent could be on like Surf or even Scald here, but they only farm up to a potential Side Shock, so I'm going to no-shield this. Still does quite a lot of damage there, but we can fire off the Weather Ball. Weather Ball is going to be no-shielded, but I can outpace them to the next charge attack, and this likely either grabs a shield or it will get the knockout. The opponent is going to shield, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to swap out into my Cast Form, and the opponent's going to swap into a Shadow Alolan Sandslash, but they're also on Shadow Claw, which is double resisted, which means this is actually a pretty positive matchup for me. So I'm going to fire off back-to-back Weather Balls here. Unfortunately, still not quite enough damage to threaten the shield, and going for a Hex farm down is going to be a little bit tricky, but I'm actually going to shield here because I can go for another Weather Ball. I'm hoping to grab a shield here. Honestly, if they know shield, that's still fine, and they will know shield. But yeah, honestly, probably would have preferred the shield there. Either way, we're going to see a Galarian Stunfisk coming in. So I'm going to go for an energy ball. I'm then going to wait until the opponent has enough energy for a potential Earthquake. I tried to make the catch. It does not work out for me, but we can just come in with our Ludicolo anyways. And of course, they're not going to go for Earthquake here. They are just going to settle for the Rock Sides, but they are already at back-to-back Rock Sides. So I'm going to no-shield both of these because a Side Shock is going to do more damage from the Galarian Slowking, but I can now just shield once, and my Astonish damage is going to register. Second one actually gets the knockout, and now here we are close to back-to-back Weather Balls. However, I believe the opponent already has another Rock Side, so we're going to grab the final shield. I'm then going to swap back into my Cast Form, where of course we can take a Rock Side pretty comfortably. We can now go for one Hex, fire off the Energy Ball, which once again is going to hit for neutral damage. It doesn't quite get the knockout, but one more Hex gets the full farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see Shadow Annihilate in the lead. So last time around, they did have a Dugong and a Bastion in the back line, so we do have to be slightly wary of that, just in case that is the case this time around again. But here, we are going to go for the Weather Ball, and they're actually on counter, so of course, dealing more fast pressure, but a bit slower to reach the charge moves. The opponent's now going to come in with a Licky Licky. I'm going to chip with a Weather Ball, and then once again, not expecting the opponent to throw straight away, but I do actually swap out into my Cast Form anyways. Maybe should have thrown one Ember first, but either way, it doesn't really matter because from that range, they didn't have to full send a Shadow Ball, so I wouldn't have been able to make a catch of the Shadow Ball there. But either way, we're going to come in with the Cast Form. I should still be able to live any charge move they throw, and then I'm actually going to go for an Energy Ball just because it's going to do more damage, but also if they do potentially try and make a catch back onto Annihilate, this is neutral damage and it does get the knockout. Also, the opponent over farms with the Licky Licky, which means we get to another Weather Ball, and Weather Ball is going to be shielded. At this point, I guess potentially they could still have a Bastiodon in the backline, but I'm going to come in with my Ludicolo. I'm going to no-shield the first move. The opponent is going to full send a Shadow Ball, but they're going to have a Carbink in the back. So honestly, I probably wish I shielded there because once again, Carbink is a little bit problematic just because they are applying a lot of fast pressure. So at this point, I'm actually going to use my shield here. Ninetales should be able to reach an Energy Ball, so all I should be able to do here is go for a charge move. This should be grabbing the final shield, but they actually no shield and it doesn't do enough damage, and that is a huge mistake. And then also, we don't throw on perfect timing, which means they get a full rollout in for free, which means they're actually able to fully fast move farm me down, and we completely messed up the end game there. The opponent comes out with the Body Slam loaded, taking out the Ludicolo, and unfortunately I lose that game. But GG's opponent into the next battle. You can see Fortress in the lead, so an amazing matchup for the Ninetales, of course. They're going to be swapping into Gelatin. Honestly, Cast Form is a better response just because Shadow Ball is going to do like no damage at all. They're forced to go straight Surf, and likely 2 Surfs won't be enough damage to KO. However, we come in with the Ludicolo. I guess my thinking was in case they're on Bug Bite. Obviously, Ludicolo is not going to have a great matchup into Fortress, just in case the opponent did somehow manage to flip that matchup there. But either way, we're going to go for a Weather Ball, and I'm predicting the opponent wouldn't throw straight away, which they could have done, but they don't, and so I go for one extra Astonish. I fire off another Weather Ball, and at this point, I'm going to swap out. I don't know if this was necessarily a great play because I'm catching a Rock Tomb onto my Cast Form, and they can debuff me yet again. However, this is just going to be a Sand Tomb. I'm now debuffed in my attack and my defense, and the opponent's final Pokemon is Altaria. Now, Altaria is going to resist everything I can possibly throw in the charge move department apart from these Rock Weather Balls, so whilst I am debuffed, they might as well shield these here, but I can just clear that debuff immediately. I come in with my Ninetales. I'm not looking to shield here because, of course, I can't really deal much damage. However, that Sky Attack doesn't really do that much damage either, and what it will do is allow the opponent to fully Dragon Breath farm me down and come out close to another charge move. So potentially you could argue that maybe I could have come in with my Ludicolo instead, but either way, we've got them fairly low. Of course, we can come back in with the Cast Form. I think I'm just going to no-shield this. I'm pretty sure I've put them into range where Ludicolo can get the knockout with a resisted Weather Ball. Now here, you can see I'm going to overfarm quite considerably because honestly, I hadn't realized that I took out the Fortress. I thought they still had like 1 HP left, so I was looking out for a potential catch, but they had no Pokemon left, so of course, a Weather Ball gets the knockout. We get the KO there, and then, of course, I just take that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Ninetales in the lead up against a Fearow once again. This time around, I'm actually going to throw a Weather Ball on the potential CMP tire with the opponent, but they choose to overfarm. So at this point, what I'm hoping for is that we've put them into range where a Rock Weather Ball will KO. So I think eventually I'd look to swap out, but the opponent actually... they swap out instead. So at this point, we're going to go for a Weather Ball. Weather Ball is going to connect, and now we're going to come in with our Ludicolo because I realize it does have a pretty bad matchup into the Fearow. Also, I realize I'm going to need 2 Weather Balls here, so there's no point full sending the Energy Ball because that's just not going to do enough damage, and I don't really have much fast speed pressure with my backline where, of course, both Astonish and Hex are going to be double resisted. So at this point, we're going to fire off the Weather Ball. We actually throw it on CMP, which works out for me. Weather Ball is going to be caught. Actually, no, never mind. That was not a CMP tie. I then swap back into my Ninetales, and this could be quite risky if the opponent's final Pokemon is a Tinkaton, which honestly could be the case. However, I'm reading in this case that it instead is going to be a Quagsire. So at this point, of course, we've got Energy Ball on our cast form. We're going to come in. I will have to tank a Drill Peck, or potentially a Drill Run if they went for that instead. But either way, the opponent likely going to have to swap out of that matchup. They come back in with the Licky Licky, but we're able to win CMP. Rock Weather Ball gets the knockout, and it is the Quagsire in the back line. So this should be game over. The opponent is going to fire off the Aquatail. Aquatail, we probably would live that, but I'm now going to look to swap back into my Ludicolo. The opponent fires off the next Aquatail, but it's double resisted, so it actually doesn't get the KO there. But what this will allow me to do is reach an Energy Ball and a Weather Ball, so we're going to throw straight away. Energy Ball gets the knockout. Weather Ball, of course, super effective into the Fearow, but from this range, we could have thrown anything there. It gets the knockout, and I'm able to take that game. So heading into the final team here, we are going to lead Abomasnow into Talonflame. So one of the worst things we could possibly see. We're going to swap into Ludicolo, and here you're going to see that this matchup actually is not that dominant for the Hakamoa, but what I should have done is thrown the Energy Ball, because I go for Weather Ball, the opponent actually overfarms quite considerably, so I'm going to go for another Weather Ball here, and we do get them very low. Now, I don't think I can flip this matchup without double shielding, and I don't really want to do that because even though, of course, we've got Rock Weather Ball on our cast form, is still not going to do that much if the opponent's just got a 2-shot advantage. But you see, we got them incredibly low there. So what we could have done, thrown the Energy Ball first, then gone for a Weather Ball, and actually, either I would have forced a shield or flipped that matchup, and we needed switch advantage, because unfortunately, they just hard counter me again with a Komo-O, and so we lose that game. We're into the next battle. Not a great lead, but definitely a lot more playable, as we see a cast form there. So I'm going to be swapping out into my cast form. Oh, sorry, we see a Carbink there, and so I swap into my cast form. Unfortunately, because this is non-stab Energy Balls, 2 of them will not be enough damage to get the knockout, and unlike the Kanto Ninetales, which we saw earlier got the knockout with 2, of course, there is no Shadow Cast Form, so we're not going to get the KO there, so instead, I'm going to go for a Rock Weather Ball. I'm really hoping this is enough damage to KO, but the opponent actually uses a shield. So that's fine with me. I'm just going to no shield here as the opponent goes for Rock Slide. That doesn't quite get the KO, so I swap into Ludicolo, and the opponent actually comes in with their own Shadow Kanto Ninetales. So this is just going to be a Weather Ball, but they didn't throw on the best timing, and what that's going to allow me to do now is reach back-to-back Weather Balls. So if the opponent is going to want to shield the first one, I'm actually going to reach a second one. I didn't need to use a shield, and Weather Ball is super effective. It's going to take out the Ninetales. And the opponent, I don't know what they had in the backline, but either way, GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, we're going to see an Abomasnow mirror match. So this is a bit of a tricky one here. We are going to look to overfarm in this match if the opponent tries to catch a double resisted Weather Ball, which is quite a nice play there, but we hold on to the energy. So we're now going to come in with a Ludicolo. I'm going to shield the first Drill Peck because they are actually going to reach another Drill Peck here. But what I can do is farm up to back-to-back Energy Balls, and I actually don't know who wins CMP in this matchup. I don't really use Ludicolo that often, but hopefully it is going to be me. If not, well, the opponent is going to no shield anyways, so I guess it technically doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to bank the energy there because both charge moves are resisted by the Abomasnow. I swap into my cast form where the opponent is going to come back in with their Abomasnow, and I'm actually going to shield the next move as the opponent is going to full send the Energy Ball. Now unfortunately for me, because this is a non-shadow Abomasnow, Rock Weather Ball is not enough damage to get the knockout of my switch clock, not quite coming up in time, so I'm forced to throw a second charge move. It does get the KO there, but they've got a Camerupt in the back. Now, honestly, this is a bit of a misplay on my end. I go for Energy Ball as it will do more damage, but it's never going to put them into farm down range. So, honestly, I should have just thrown the Weather Ball there because I then could, of course, force both shields here, and then I'd put the opponent into a very tricky situation because I've got a charge move loaded on my Ludicolo, but I expect the opponent will throw straight away, so we come in with the cast form, but unfortunately, they're able to get to back-to-back charge moves, which means Rock Tomb gets the KO there. They can win CMP, but if I just went straight for Weather Ball, I think cast form would have reached a Weather Ball there if they tried to overfarm like they did, and I could have won that game. But either way, GG's to that opponent into the final battle of this video, leading into an Alolan Ninetales. So I'm going to swap out into cast form, unfortunately met with an Umbreon, where of course they are going to resist the fast food pressure, which means this isn't really a very good matchup for me. However, I'm going to go for an Energy Ball. Energy Ball is going to be no shielded. Unfortunately, no debuff there, but that's okay. I'm going to look to no shield as well, and the opponent is on foul play. So I can actually live that, but I'm just going to bank a ton of energy and then swap out into my Abomasnow. I realize these charge moves aren't doing much damage at all in this matchup, whereas up against the Ninetales, where of course Weather Ball is super effective, then that energy is going to be quite useful. So yeah, I no-shield the first move. I'm now going to reach an Energy Ball on the CMP tie. We win CMP, and we're able to connect there. So at this point, you know what? I'm actually going to use a shield because we know we win CMP, and actually it only takes 4 to get to the next move, which means I would win CMP once again. So the opponent actually doesn't throw any energy. Instead, they're going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Jellicent. And actually, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. My cast form has so much energy, and also they can never farm me down with their Jellicent because I'm going to double resist the hex damage. So we go for a Weather Ball bait. We end up grabbing a shield, which is really nice, and then I'm going to cover for a potential catch by going for the Energy Ball this time around. Now, they're actually not able to swap out just yet anyways. However, Energy Ball is no shielded. It does big damage, doesn't quite get the knockout. But either way, foul play will be taking me out. I predict they're going to swap back into their Jellicent straight away, which means we come in with the cast form. Could have been a little bit awkward there, just because if they didn't swap out, I don't think cast form actually gets the farm down, but they call the bait there. Both times they were incorrect, which means we can Powder Snow, farm them down to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.